Welcome to another episode of the Chicks on the Right podcast, where we talk to our friend and sponsor of the show, Zach Abraham from Bulwarks Capital Management. And we have a very interesting topic to talk with you about today. Apparently, there are more and more states that are now mandating or at least offering to have personal finance courses for high school students to help them kind of get ready to start adulting. And this is not something that I had in school. You are around our age. And so I'm assuming that you two didn't either. But what do you think about this, Zach? Is this a good time to get kids like you? Obviously, this is your career. So when did you become interested and who taught you?
Yeah, no, great question. And generally speaking, yeah, to me, it's all about the implementation and rollout and obviously the curriculum. But that being said, I think any additional financial education is beneficial.
Yeah.
I came to it honestly. So my dad also had an investment firm. So I grew up in the industry, and I just remember there were two goals actually. I was either going to be an NFL player or I was going to manage money.
The NFL thing didn't work out so well. It just didn't.
Well, when you're 5'9", 205, you got to run a little bit faster than a 4.8 40.
Yeah.
And that was about as and I killed myself to get to a 4.8 42. I mean, that was humming for me. So yeah, it wasn't in the stars as they'd say. And so I think I'd figured that out at about 15. I was kind of looking around going, I played against a couple future NFL guys, and you're kind of looking at them going, okay, that looks a lot different.
Yeah. But your dad taught you, like did you save from an early age?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't like there was no Warren Buffett story. I was more into sports in terms of a pastime, so I never operated a business. There were little things that we did here and there to make some money. I was actually always just very intrigued by the stock market. And I don't know why, and it's funny because now from where I'm at, looking back, I realize how bizarre it was. But especially for somebody that young at age, I was just mesmerized with the concept of value investing in something that everybody had thrown away and said is worthless, and realizing that, wait a second, there's a substantial value here. So no, I think that I think it is more needed today than ever before, because I think that culture has been taken over by, there's so many ways that kids had inputs of information, right? Whether it was going down to the soda fountain, and I'm sounding really old here, and I'm not old enough to have hung out, but you know what I mean. There were these environmental or cultural or community type touch points that you'd have as a kid that just don't exist today, right?
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, the neighborhood we just moved out of, a wonderful place, but you drive through it, it's full of families. You wouldn't see any kids playing outside. Right. And so the information that kids are interacting with and confronting is very different. And you can see it, like, for instance, nobody is out there teaching people about compounded interest. Right. We're got, this coin and that coin and meme coins, and everything is about, looking the part and owning this and owning that. And, the things that kids need to really be taught is, again, I'll sound old, but understanding the difference between money and cash flow.
Yeah.
Right? Understanding the difference in you have a pile of money here, but the question you should be asking yourself is, what kind of stream of income can that pile of money generate? Right? Instead of thinking about nominal amounts, thinking about generating cash flows or buying cash flows at deep discounts, and also teaching them. And anybody that is, well, I shouldn't say anybody. There's some people that skip the rules, but like those are always exceptions. If you look at anybody that achieves anything substantially financial, it always typically starts with discipline, right?
Yeah.
And what you try to do is get those kids, and I've done it with employees and other people in my family, where you go, listen, I need you to quit seeing this as discipline and hard, and I need you to start seeing it as your advantage, right? We want you to disconnect from the hardwire input that culture's got in there telling you that you need all these things and indebting you in the process. understanding what the credit bureau really is, right? When you step back and look at this consumer system, it's about modern usury. It's about enslavement, period. End of story, right? Your credit score, I actually had to go back in and open a couple additional credit lines so I could get the best mortgage rate because I didn't have enough credit.
Yeah.
Right.
But tangibly, when you talk to your kids, like, cause you have 3 children, right? You have 3?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
When you talk to your kids, like, how do you weave like all your financial expertise into their daily lives? Like, do you make them get a checking account at a certain age? Do you teach them about saving? Like, that's because as a parent, I didn't have parents that taught me how to do this stuff. And so I look now, I'm like, okay, so we need to do better with our kids. Well, we have 2 older kids. One is 35 and one's 30, and they're doing great. And they understand how to save because we told them don't make the same mistakes that we made when we were young. Yeah. So they've learned from our mistakes. And I think the 15-year-old will do the same. But like from a tangible day-to-day perspective, like what would you tell a parent if they were new? How do you teach a kid about managing money? Should they get a checking account at like 12 or something? How do you do that in your house?
And should they even bother with like balancing a checkbook, or does that even matter anymore? You know what I mean?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit I haven't balanced a checkbook in years.
It's been
you don't need to, right?
Yeah. Right, well, and my wife handles the bill paying and stuff like that. So, a few different answers here. I think there's multiple different ways that you approach it, and I don't think it's anywhere near as complicated as people think. So with my own kids, honestly, I think we actually had a conversation about it last night, and I have a policy with them that as long as I know that the information stays inside the house, we'll be honest with them about anything financial. And there've been multiple times like last night where my daughter goes, "Dad, what's your net worth?" And I'm going, you know what? This is the last thing on earth I want to tell her. Because as a business owner, your net worth can look, depending on how you look at it, it can look one way or the other. But we made her that deal, and I think that naturally makes the kids a little bit more engaged because they know that they're going to get real information, and they try to synthesize it and things like that. The other thing we've done with them is open them investing accounts. So it's through a thing called Greenlight, where we'll sit down and pick out different stocks. We don't do it super religiously at all. If we pop open the kids' stock accounts once a quarter, but the whole concept was getting them to understand, what I do. And like I said, the biggest number one thing that parents can do is point out the difference between being in debt and owning assets. When I deal with people, I've got clients who've got incredible levels of financial sophistication, and I've got clients that don't. And that level of sophistication has very little correlation with their net worth, right? The number one correlated thing I see to our clients with the highest net worths are clients that avoided debt and stayed out, stayed cash rich, right? They owned their assets didn't own them. And there's so many different reasons why that occurs, right? One of the biggest reasons why that's so advantageous is when extremely good buying opportunities come along, i.e. in recessions or i.e. in economic problems, because you're not levered, you can take advantage.
Right.
When everybody else is just stuck like Chuck because they're levered, their income, they're spending 120% of what they make. They're hoping they don't get a pay cut because they don't know how they're going to afford it now, right? Being unlevered is how you take advantage of these situations, and teaching them who cares. All of these idiots around you are drowning in debt. Why do you want to impress them? Right?
Yeah. But even like Mock, when I know when your son went to college, like you have to sit down with them, and we do this with our youngest too, more so probably than we did with the older ones. But we sit down with them and we say, okay, like kind of like what you say, debt and all that kind of, but also like this is what things cost. Like, I think a lot of kids don't even understand that. Like my daughter asked me the other day, she goes, "What's a mortgage?" And I had to explain that to her. And she's like, "Wait, so you don't actually own your house?" And I'm like, "Well, technically." And then we had to get that whole discussion. But kids, if you tell them about the everyday tangible things that are in your life, I think we've done that more so with the youngest one. But she asks a lot more questions, and then it opens up the conversation, and then it becomes this discussion of what are you going to be paying in rent one day? You're going to have to pay a power bill. You're going to have to pay a water bill. And she's like, "You have to pay for water?" I mean, this is The kind of
there's
stuff,
bills?
right? And I know that you went through that with your son too, Mary, when he went off to college. It's like, here are the things you're going to have to, that actually are paid for you right now, but you're going to eventually have to pay for these things. And then it's, it's a
and
whole.
so you need to find a job that pays you at least this amount. If you want a certain lifestyle, then get ready. Yeah.
I had this conversation with a couple of one of my younger cousins and her friend. And we were talking about the other thing too to bring up too, and we were talking about it with my daughter the other night, and this story I was about to tell you, but also dating, right? Like who are you dating? We were telling who you're around is the number one differentiator of who you're going to become.
Yes.
Right? And it's never more true in your spouse. And I was explaining to my daughter, is the money the most important thing? No, integrity, loving God, being a compassionate person, those are much more important to us. But at the same time, I said, you also need to be honest with yourself, meaning you've grown up in such a way. Okay. So do not expect that same lifestyle if you go to a guy that wants to work at middle management at Deloitte and Touche, right? Like, it's just not. And then for you to have those expectations isn't fair to the spouse, which these dynamics cost probably over half of divorces in the country. You know what I mean? And just having those anecdotal discussions and pointing out, listen, these choices you're making and whether you understand this or not has such a big implication. And also, do you understand that everybody doesn't just get born and slide into a position like your current, right? This isn't guaranteed to you, right? We live a different existence. And what's funny is a lot of us don't think we do, but if you start breaking down like global averages, everybody listening to this podcast, or probably 98, 99% of you, are in the top 3% globally financially, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you break down the hard data, and that's going to be where you're at. And just explaining to the kids, like you guys said, what everything costs, what inflation is, right? The value of a dollar, hard work, just all these things. And I don't think
taxes.
Paying yourself first.
Right.
Yes, paying yourself first. Yes. But the number one thing, like I'll always go back to this, is restraint. Do not spend money that isn't yours to impress people that don't care about you.
Right. Agreed. I totally agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also understanding what millionaires really look like. I tell this story 100% of the time, and I had wonderful examples in my life. But, we currently we got 18 employees, manage $800 million. People are like, you got to spend money to make money. I was rounding up all the initial clients from Bulwark driving a 2001 Ford Focus hatchback four-door. Okay?
Yeah.
With 190,000 miles on it. Those people that say you need money, nonsense. It's a substitution for work. Don't listen to them. Get out there, bust your tail. The older people will actually be impressed that you're not spending your money on that stuff because game recognizes game, right?
Right.
And then you start attracting the right people too. Right?
I love that advice. I love that. Absolutely love that.
And you always have great advice. And it's why it's so cool that you do these regular seminars for folks, to the webinars, I should say. So how can people get in on that action?
It is actually exceptionally easy. So you could just go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. We got a prompt that will pop up on the screen. Again, these are free of cost. We don't twist any arms. Run you through our process. What we see are the risks out there today, as well as the opportunities. And if you're interested, you can book an appointment, talk to me or one of our other advisors. And if it works, great. You got a client and you're not sending your money to Vanguard or BlackRock. That's another bonus, right? So knowyourriskradio.com, bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. Just Google us and we're not hard to find.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, ladies.
Services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.